Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Digital League of Assessment Professionals, a collective of assessors especially created for the professionalized assessment within the digital space. This morning we are hosted by Passion for Performance. Passion Performance continues to be the leading e-assessment platform in South Africa. In our experience, we've been exploring and searching for a way to create a space for assessment within the digital world, and hence the birth of DLAP. My name is Gabriel and I'll be your host this morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm a small business owner and also a trainer within the audio space. Today's topic is part 2 of the underestimated value of good assessment strategy. And we are very privileged to have a full panel this morning. Morning, guys. We are speaking to Darren, Michiel, and Giselle. I'm going to give all of you just a quick 2 minutes just to introduce yourself. Darren, if we start with you, just maybe 2 minutes on who you are and what you do and how you fit into DLAP.
So I'm Darren. I run a company called Passion for Performance, which is hosting this. We are disrupting the education space with technology. So not just from an e-learning perspective, but from an actual e-assessment, e-portfolio, e-moderation perspective. And I think we've come to learn that there is quite an interesting gap in the competence of assessors, not just educational training assessors, but pretty much anyone that does assessment, whether it be performance management or recruitment or competency-based. And a lot of people just do what was done to them. So we're hoping to work closely with DLAP to really elevate the role of the assessor and help people just feel safer in the professionalism of what they do.
Awesome. Thank you, Darren. Michiel, 2 minutes. Just introduce yourself and maybe just explain how you fit into DLAP.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Gabriel. Michiel van der Schuyf. I live in what I think is the most beautiful side of South Africa, George. I own a consultancy firm called Vander Consultancy, where I consult to businesses in the skills development space as well as in the management consulting space. That's me, not 2 minutes needed.
That's quick. Giselle.
Good morning, I'm Giselle McIntyre. I run a company called Transcend Consulting. We specialize in consulting companies in their skills development and getting ROI, connecting their skills development to their BBBE. And I also train and accredit assessors and moderators and all of those companies.
Oh, awesome. Thank you very much. So we're going to jump straight into some questions. The first question is, what is an assessment strategy and how is it underestimated? Anyone?
Oh, okay, let's go.
So I think this morning we're just having a bit of an open discussion, and it'd be nice if all of you can give your insight on each of the questions. Obviously, time permitting.
Okay. Why we are laughing is when we have our internal meetings. Sometimes virtual meetings, you never get that nudge from somebody's body language that they're going to start talking, and then just all of a sudden everybody starts talking at once. So anyway, for me, this assessment strategy component. Especially now while I'm helping some providers going digital, and converting their normal instructor-led training onto an e-learning solution, it actually becomes quite evident that they didn't think through the strategy on how the learning journey starts and how it would end really, and the type of evidence that would be needed and what it is that you want to look at. So I think one needs to just stand back for a moment and say, okay, what is it that we want to achieve here through assessment? What are the results that we want to get from it? What are the behavioral change that we want to get back in terms of our assessment. We always throw around a lot of technology or terminology, when we talk about outcomes-based, where we say, it's about skills and knowledge and it's attitude, but it is that, it's what of that is important in the specific component of either the program qualification or the competency framework, whatever, and how do you isolate that to make sure that that is what you are assessing and not all these wonderful things around it. There's a lot of time being wasted and with paperwork, and I understand, especially in the world of education, training and development, working with ETQAs, there are a lot of statutory aspects and administration, because training really is not a tangible thing, it's the paperwork that makes it tangible. So I'm not scared of the paperwork, but I think we're wasting words on paper because we don't really know what we are looking at. Is it now, are we testing somebody's numeracy skills? So let's just test that. Let's just give them an assessment tool and evaluate their numeracy skills, not how they spell their name, for example. I know that's a silly example, whatever, but we stay with where we're at. If it's a behavioral change that needs to take place, and especially in the world of compliance, these crane operators and whatever, there really needs to be a lot of gray areas around it that influences that. So it's not just, okay, let's get in, let's start the truck and go for it. It's how did the journey eventually get there? Has all the checks been put into place? And one thing that I see, and in the beginning days, I was also guilty of this, is that when you look at a unit standard or a program or qualification, you tend to not look at what is the embedded knowledge that is needed to get to a certain point. And that's what I'm saying with that is maybe just take a step back and make sure that embedded knowledge is available and is present and has been assessed or imparted before you continue. Because we all know that assumption is the father of all evil. There's a lot of words going on in the ETD environment. So we assume that this. We assume that but that's a dangerous place to be at. The assessment strategy for me needs to really take away all those gray areas and eliminate all those assumptions and really look at what are the perspectives that you want to acquire, with the assessment.
Darren, do you want to add to that?
Yes, and I think, and I like what Michiel was saying, a big problem that people have is that assessment is often reactive, not proactive. So what will happen is in the workplace, the workers will be doing what they do, and then there'll be an accident, fatality. And then all of a sudden, a new assessment gets, make sure you measure that. And then there's another accident, and measure that. And, just make sure, and it's created as a point of cover my ass rather than created as a point of actual focused growth. So even in recruitment, people go, I want to hire this person, so let me hire them against a job description, but I don't really know what the job description means, but let me hire them anyway. And we throw a psychometric at that. Well, great, we've got a psychometric that says you can fit the job, but without a focused strategy. So simply an assessment strategy is like, it's saying, I want to know if someone can do something, and if they were doing it, what would I see? So I love what Michiel said. If I'm going to test maths, what I see is someone can string high-ended British Queen's English together to answer a maths question. And then the second question, because we were talking about this earlier in the week, was, do I want to see that someone can get the answer, or do I want to see the path that they took to get the answer? Because both of those require a different type of assessment thinking, and therefore the portfolio shifts. And what we often experience, in what I experience in assessment, is because we don't know what success looks like. So I want to know if a waiter can serve a table, let him write a test. Writing a test doesn't help you understand what serving a table looks like. It just, you can put the answers in. So without a thought through strategy, without a step back and going, okay, what is it that we want to achieve in our assessments as a whole? So, it kind of starts at the top going, we as a company want assessment to bring the different value, the current value, or this type of value. And then once we know that, we can filter it down to job level. Without that in place, we're doing what we're doing. A lot of paperwork gets filed somewhere for some reason, for some time, for something. It's of no value. People don't do it until HR come to you the day before and threaten you with your life and your jobs, and it all falls apart. So assessment is actually something that people are afraid of or angry with or don't like, versus something that's actually going to turn business, and especially now into the digital space. It really needs to get done. Thanks, Kevin.
So following on that, and I think I want to just go to Giselle next, is what are the metrics, what are the aids that help us to create that assessment process, according to you?
I think, if you listen to what Darren and Michiel have said, I think it's very important that it's called outcomes-based assessment for a reason, and that's not an educational term. I mean, if you think about it, everything you ever do in your life is connected to a result that you want. So we give it fancy names, but that's the point. And when we don't know what the result is, when we don't know what it is that we want in the end, then assessment becomes quite useless. So if you're saying to me, I want somebody who can make good coffee, but you haven't defined for me what good coffee would mean and what it is in terms of anyone else who thinks what good coffee is, then it's very difficult for me to measure if you can drink good coffee. And I can have wonderful forms and I can get the best assessors in. The point is that if I don't know what I'm measuring and I don't know why I'm measuring it, then it's useless. So the tools that need to be created, the assessment design tools, are critical to the entire strategy of an assessment. And what very often happens is people will say, but we've got a standard operating procedure, and they will see that as their measurement. But when you go and have a look at what that is, we've all seen job descriptions where they say the frontline worker must be friendly. How are you going to measure that? Because assessment is a measurable. It's something that you can measure. So is friendly that she smiles, is friendly that she doesn't chuck you with a stapler? What is it that you actually are doing in order to get to a point of saying this person, together with 100 other people in a similar situation and in an unsimilar situation that I measure, would be considered friendly? So that is very often why people are negative about assessment. Because as Michiel said, it's I'm testing whether you can do maths, but I'm then marking you wrong because you spell something incorrect. So we have to be clear in our strategy from the beginning. What is it that we're measuring and why are we measuring that particular thing, and against what are we measuring it? The standard can be anything. It can really be anything. And I think that's the difference between what a lot of people see in education is they see a standard as a unit standard or something. Standard operating procedure actually says standard. But if you think about it, if you're using a Samsung and you move over to an Apple iPhone, there's a different set of standards in how you would do something. The buttons are on a different side. That's also a standard. So it needs to be clear first what it is that the outcome is, what's the result we want, before you start integrating it into forms and anything else. And that's often where I think digital will have an advantage, because digital is fast. So you can't go jaka, 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 jaka. People are just going to switch off. So you're going to have to get very clear, very fast about what exactly it is that you're measuring and why you're doing that.
Michiel, what are the tools or aids that you would use if you're assessing a assessment process?
So, Gabriel, as Giselle's talking, and I know that I lean a little bit more to the education side in my responses, and there's a whole world besides just education. I always get worried a little bit when an assessor comes to me and says, "Oh, I can't assess because I don't have the marking memo." Now, yes, okay, for a mathematical sort of assessment, I suppose there's a right and a wrong answer. So let's park that one for a moment. But in this whole application thing that we're talking about, that Giselle says outcomes-based, which is not really just an academic term or education term, is you need to stand back and look at experience, either from yourself and from what the person that you're assessing is reflecting in whatever it is that you're looking at. So when we talk about tools, I always wonder if that is what people mean. It's like a beautiful assessor guide with marking memos. I literally did an assessor guide last night, and to check a box in EGQA, you have to have marking answers. So, for example, the subject matter is how to conduct meetings. All right? So, conduct is very much the same example as the coffee. So now somebody needs to conduct a meeting. So now the marking memo says the following: learners' answers will vary depending on their environment. So that is a marking memo. So now an assessor is guided by that, because that's what they ask for. I don't have a lot of hair, but I lose more hair when all of that happens. So tools is specific to the environment that you're at, and that's why the assessment strategy, it all starts there. I've created, and I know Giselle, we've created beautiful templates and checklists and evaluation forms and happy faces. And now with digital, you can just say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 is very bad, 4 is very good, those type of scenarios. And it's all pretty and all beautiful. But if you don't know where you're going towards, the tool doesn't really make sense. So sometimes a simple checklist is the right tool. Just like yes, 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 yes. Sometimes it needs to be a recording, and you sit down in an interview after the session, and you play through the recording, and there's a coaching assessment that takes place. Like, can you see there the way that you handled that situation in the meeting wasn't quite good, or you didn't allow for a discussion to happen properly. Rather than saying, okay, the answers will vary, there's an assessment criteria or a report or evaluation report to say, did the learners do this? No, he didn't do it. But, maybe he did. Maybe he did it just a little bit differently because you're not used to it. So I hope I'm answering the question correctly, but a tool needs to be thought through very carefully in line with the strategy. Okay. It's what it is that you want to achieve, and then we see, all right, but how will you measure those things? The friendliness, if it is smiling, how wide should the smile be? So I don't know, Giselle, do you want to maybe add something here?
I think, Michiel, you've really, that is exactly what it is. If we don't have a clear idea of what it is we want to do, we can have the most amazing tools. So my first reaction to that question always is that the assessor, and it's such a simple rule actually, the assessor needs to be a subject matter expert, which means that person needs to have a lot of experience. So, if you're going to assess a particular thing that you've never seen or done ever in your life, you are going to ask Michiel and myself, where's the marking instruments? How do I, honestly, if you are marking numeracy and you don't know how to work out the sum, then I don't know why you're marking numeracy. You shouldn't be. So the concept is that the assessor is also a tool. And the assessment in terms of their experience, their subject matter expertise, but also in terms of their and I know common sense is not common, but in terms of their common sense, their real world ability is what's critical. So quite frankly, we can build tools up the yos. In the long run, it's still going to be the human being using that tool that's really important. That's why I train assessors, and why my assessors, I'm a bit of a pain in the butt when it comes to it, because it's about making sure that person is a real human being. If you're a tick box operator, you actually cannot perform properly. We've decided to digitize because we're supposed to be taking away the things a machine can do. Tick boxes machines can do. What a machine can't do is the nuances that an experienced person can do. And that's part of the tools as well, quite frankly.
If I can weigh in, Giselle and Michiel, again, I think in listening to what you're saying, the area in which I'm playing a lot, and this is where most people, especially in the education and training space, but I see it across, they don't understand this thing, what we call as an artifact. So while you guys are discussing what must be assessed, which is vital to the strategy, often a missing point is, well, if I'm going to tick this box, what is it that I want to see in order to tick the box? And that becomes what we call an artifact. So like what Michiel was saying, sometimes after you sit down and rewatch the video, that video is an artifact. It's actually something that you can look at in order to measure competence. And that's where people tend to stop. In these strategies, they tend to go, oh, these are the boxes that you must tick. So, and I'm going to use Michiel's example again. You know, you're doing a how to conduct meetings. So you must conduct a meeting. But what would I give? What would I provide? What artifact would I provide to show you that I can conduct a meeting? What do you want to see? And that's what providers do not, most times they do not define. And that's when, one, if you're not a subject matter expert, like Giselle said, you shouldn't really be assessing the topic. And the simple, my simplicity around that is, if the person kills someone in 3 weeks' time, the assessor is held accountable for that. So if you're happy to put your signature on that piece of paper saying this person can do it because of a marking memorandum, well, then you're braver than I am. But the other side of it is, so you know, in the, you know, simple waitrons again, and even forecourts, you know, petrol pump attendants, most places have CCTVs these days, and they video everything all the time. That's artifact. I mean, you can literally use that in a situation, again, not always, in a situation, you know, you can take clips of that video to prove that you can do something. So as a waiter to serve a table, if clients are open to it, you know, you can video yourself serving the customer. You then don't need to write a test if you can demonstrate the serving process, because all the test is going to ask you is for the knowledge. Do you know how to serve? But at the end of the day, if you've served the customer and the customer's happy and we've captured that on a video, that's good for performance reviews. That's good for recruitment. I can show that to my next boss when I want to go work for them. That's good for ETD, in terms of education and training towards the credits or qualification, because it's demonstrating what you can do. And all the provider would do is, I want to see a 3-minute video of you serving a customer where you welcome them, take them to their chair and give them a menu. Bang. So there is a checklist involved there, but we need to define the artifact that would be accepted, and the artifacts go into the strategy. As a company, we will accept these type of artifacts. Once it's in the strategy, we know what we can use, and then using the not so common sense, you know, it gives the assessor the ability to play within the strategy to go, I know that they asked for a piece of paper here, but I'm actually going to allow a video, because I know that a video will demonstrate what the piece of paper is saying anyway, and they can shift the way assessment takes place to enable the end user or the learner to be assessed. Yeah, I think that's my way in for now. Yes, Michiel, go for it.
And also, I'm just, you know, as you're talking, Darren, at the end of the day, what I do feel very strongly about here, and I know I'm being supported by the panel, is it makes it real life. It makes it a real life environment. You know, it really is applied. If you watch the petrol attendant on the CCTV camera, you see his or her normal everyday going. Okay, it's not, oh yes, see, I'm being assessed now, and now I must stand up straight, and I must make sure that I'm greeting the client, and you know. So you want to make it real life related.
I think, Giselle, go for it. I wanted to throw a spanner in the wheel, but I'll leave you to first.
let me. I just, you know, what's also important is that a lot of people think just having the artifact is good enough, and I like what Darren is saying, is that you do have to sit down and look at everything. I have a very good example. I'm training some guys who are actually assessing skydivers. And what they would do is their checklist afterward would be, do they have a video of the skydiving event? Tick. And I said, okay, so as long as they have a video of a guy, I mean, you can't see him, hey, coming down from the sky, and his parachute successfully goes open and he lands, tick. I mean, is that what you are assessing? Are you assessing that you can see a video, or are you assessing what happens during the skydive? And that's why it's important that the artifacts are to gather the evidence. The assessor, who then knows what they're doing, needs to look at all of that evidence. That's why we say then you evaluate your evidence. And if you haven't done that yet, the person can't be found competent in whatever it is they're doing. You know, if they are supposed to put 3 screws into something, then do you just go 3 screws were put in? Or are the 3 screws put in the right place at the right time? And I think that's important as well.
The question, I love the skydiving topic because I skydive. I can talk about that for quite a while. But when you guys were talking, so the question I wanted to pose, and this is something we spoke about earlier in one of the previous sessions, is, so who assessed the assessor to make sure, okay, this assessor actually understands the assessment criteria? Is it that assessor's own, I mean, does he self-assess? Or, I mean, what is the criteria and what's the level of understanding there, if I could put it that way?
I want to answer that. There's, and this is very important. For a long time, assessors were considered, especially in the education environment, as a compliance issue. You had to have done a course, you then had to register with a CETA, et cetera, et cetera. But someone, for example, like an insurance assessor, had to go through the same process, just in a different environment. An assessor basically has to be assessed in 3 ways. They have to be assessed by themselves. So every time an assessor does an assessment, there needs to be a self-reflection. And that's not wishy-washy, and it's not a hippie response. They have to self-reflect because they're a subject matter expert, and they need to keep checking that they, for example, still have continuous professional development going. That's why in DLAP we've said, people will have to continue learning because you have to keep going at it. Okay. Secondly, you are assessed by what we refer to as a moderator in the ETD environment, but there is always some kind of quality check, some kind of quality assurance. There has to be. That assessment is about your behavior, about whether you measured against the standards. It's all of this, a quality check. And then the third one, which to me is the most important, is that you are assessed by the person who assesses you. So I'm assessed by the person I assessed. So they need to, and they're not just going good because you told me I'm competent. Hey, there needs to be, you must remember there's a subliminal assessment going on with you while you are assessing all the time. And if that person starts to feel you are unfair or biased or that you are too easy, they will react to that as well. So the old-fashioned 360 that we talk about is continuously happening during an assessment process. Lots of checks and balances all the way, which needs to be there for quality, but there's a lot of subconscious subliminal stuff happening as well. And if we don't take that into account, that's when bad assessments become really bad.
Awesome. Yeah, Michiel, we're on 6 minutes, but go for it.
Okay. I can do that. You know, it is what it is. If you bought into the development of a person, whether it's education related, if it's workplace related, if you make sure that the skydiver lands with the open parachute, whatever, that is what it is. But if you just want to, like I'll say, do that checklist, or it's bums on seats for a training provider, let's get the funding going, the CETA will only pay me if I have 25 attendance registers submitted, then I have a problem with that. I have a huge problem with that, and you're not there to change people's lives or really have an effect in what it is that you're trying to achieve as an assessor. Remember, if you say you're an assessor, and I'm not saying just an ETD environment, okay? In the ETD environment, there's a lot of compliance stuff that you need to do that's there. But if you're an assessor, it's because you want to look at somebody else and say, you know what, you're doing okay, you're doing well, or I can help you to do better.
Yeah.
So that is the purpose behind what it is that you're trying to achieve. So if that's not why you're there, then get out of it.
Yeah.
And what's so powerful about that is, most managers get put into the positions, or supervisors get put into positions by virtue of an interview. And companies go, you look the best person for the job, come and be this position. And the companies don't necessarily look at how well you engage with people. Because even by doing a toolbox talk on a Monday morning, that's a form of assessment. That is helping them be safe before they go in the mines, to decrease the fatalities. That's helping the store be neat and tidy for when the customers arrive, so it looks good. And what you're saying is there is an EQ element into this that you're starting to unpack now, in that, if you want to be a management of people and you want people to report to you, you've got to change the way you think, because you will be assessing them. Whether you like it or not, in that position, you are an assessor. It's what you do, because you've got to help them do their job better. And when you pull out the stick, you're going to get a kickback. What we're trying to build, and what DLAP is very focused on is, even if you have to tick the paperwork, go ahead and tick it. Tick it well, tick it properly, tick it first time correctly, but don't lie. Don't say that someone is competent when they're not, and don't say someone's not competent when they are. The idea is that you tick the paperwork, but that you help the person to develop themselves, because when they are developing with your help, then coaching and executive coaching and all the other mentoring, all the other beautiful things that we do become a way of life, not I did a 3-day course and now I know what to do. So I think that's a really, really, really lovely way of looking at it, and definitely part of what this vision of DLAP is about.
Yeah. I think what I love about that mindset as well, if it's someone that's invested into that process, there's a value for the person getting assessed, but there's also a value to this assessment strategy, going like, maybe we should rather ask the question this way, or maybe we should test this part, or rather, I love that, the thinking, DLAP thinking. Yeah. We've got 3 minutes left. Do we have time for another question, Darren? Do you wanna, is there a difference between content delivery strategy and assessment strategy? In 2 minutes.
All right, I'll weigh in with 30 seconds. Oh, yes. There's a huge difference. It's very simple. Content is what what facilitators usually vomit onto people. Content. And the problem is, when you design content before assessments, that's what you do. You get too much to tell people in too short amounts of time. And then you complain when your CEO goes, that 5-day course, I want it in half an hour, please. It can't be done. Yeah, it probably can, if you go back to your assessment strategy and figure out why the course was designed. Why did you actually create the learning? Oh, because I want to see if someone can do something. Because if you're not going to assess it, then why train it? It's the same as the job description, which was created 15 years ago. The job has changed, probably. Review the assessment strategy. Then the content strategy becomes easy, because then you got to find the content to plug it. That's my perspective.
Great.
Giselle, your turn.
I'll add to that. You train towards an outcome, you assess against an outcome. They marry. They need to meet in the middle. And how that training happens, that's everybody's own individual journey. And how the assessment ends after that is everyone's individual journey. The middle point where the outcome is measured, that's what pure assessment is really all about. Lovely,
awesome. Achille, you've got seconds left.
Absolutely. I mean, everything that they said, but definitely the brief is very important. And it's something that a lot of instructional designers, for the lack of a better description, struggle with, because, I know the business admin NKF level 4 course. Here we run with it. Okay, take a moment, breathe and brief. Sit with the client, sit with the potential market if you can, really pull it apart, brainstorm it, flip chart it, PowerPoint it, whatever you need to really pull it apart to make sure, where are we really going with this? what does the content do, and how what does the assessment do, and what is that golden thread in between them? I also don't think you can develop in isolation. I get very worried if I see advertisements with jobs going out. I need content developers. Oh, and the next moment there's an advertisement for assessment developers.
Guys, we're going to have to wrap it up, unfortunately. Great session. Thank you for your insights. And I think it's one of those sessions that can just go on for another hour.